Hey, I'm Angelo Pinto, and welcome to Let It Rip. We're coming to you from the CUNY TV studios in the shadow of the Empire State Building in New York City. We're getting straight to it. The mayoral race in New York City is heating up. The forums are rolling, the promises are flowing, but if you listen closely, really closely, you might notice something missing. Or maybe not missing, just buried, dodged, glossed over. I'm talking about the Black agenda. Let's be honest, Black New Yorkers are the backbone of the city, and nearly 1/3 of the Democratic primary voters, which is a deeply concentrated voting bloc, unlike other racial voting participants. Also, Black voters are the largest voting bloc in the Democratic Party nationally, at 88%. We saw it firsthand with the election of Eric Adams in the Democratic primary race, where he captured 7 out of 10 Black voters on the ranked choice ballot, which was a defining factor in his victory. The data is unequivocal. The road to Gracie Mansion happens by capturing the Black vote. So where are the Black agendas? Where is the plan for affordable housing that doesn't just gentrify us out? Where are the commitments to end over policing and fund Black schools, Black businesses, and Black futures? Today, we're not pulling punches. We're breaking down the platforms or the lack thereof, digging into what's real, what's lip service, and who's really here for Black New Yorkers when it counts. With us are mayoral candidates Brad Lander and Michael Blake. I'm Angelo Pinto, and this is Let It Rip. So, folks, we're going to get right into it. Do you both think it's important now? And how important is a Black agenda to have?
I mean, I put forward a better deal for Black New Yorkers, grounded in, we had done in the Comptroller's office the first ever study of the racial wealth gap in New York, which is 15 to 1. The median household net worth for a white family in New York, $270,000. The median net worth of a Black household, $18,000, 15 to 1. So yes, that's a city that is not doing right by Black New Yorkers, and I think a mayoral candidate running to lead the city has to say.
So tell us a little bit about how
gap.
you fix that, because you have kind of put together a proposal, a plan to do so. How do you bridge that gap? Is it possible? Because there's a lot of folks who may say this is just lip service. Of course, we recognize the issue, but can you do anything?
Yeah,
to
look,
change it?
because that gap flows through home ownership, it flows through small business, it flows through savings, it flows through education. And so in each of those areas, you need a mayor who's going to say, here's the plan to narrow the racial wealth gap on home ownership. So I've got a plan for a modern-day Mitchell-Lama program, affordable co-ops. The city has 12 city-owned golf courses. I want to turn 4 of them into 50,000 homes that New Yorkers could afford.
How
to
hard
own.
will it be to do that?
All
Sounds
of it's
great.
hard. Being mayor is a hard job.
No, but
getting money out to small
practically,
businesses.
how would you get it done as mayor?
Well, I've already built or preserved over 50,000 units of affordable housing as an affordable housing advocate, a city council member, as controller, so I know how to do this. But the focus in making sure that as we do it, we're also measuring, are we making sure that Black New Yorkers are getting those homes, have an opportunity to buy, are getting the capital to start small businesses? When we change our procurement rules to advantage MWBEs, look, another thing I do as controller is manage the pension funds. We've grown the percentage managed by Black managers by 37%, $6 billion more with MWBE managers. So I've gotten it done as controller. I'll get it
So
done
you
as mayor.
feel like as comptroller, you've responded in a way that speaks to the needs, because some may say as a comptroller, you control a lot of resources that could have begun to address some of
The
that
main
earlier.
resource you control as controller is the pension funds, $275 billion of assets under management. And yes, I made a commitment when I got into office to make sure that Black and Latino and Asian and women asset managers managed a lot more of that money. It was only about 11%. I've got it up to 15%. That's $6 billion, a nearly 40% increase that I've done as controller.
What do you say to this, Mike? Do you feel like a Black agenda is important? Do you feel like we need to do something different? What are your thoughts?
We have to be very direct on what you're doing for Black folk.
Indeed.
We are in a society where we're dealing with a racist demagogue in Donald Trump, who is promoting anti-Blackness, who is saying that they're going to cut the Department of Education if you talk about DEI, if you talk about Black history. You can't talk about U.S. history and New York history without talking about Black history. And so we have to be clear on what have you been doing. So what have I been doing around the Black agenda, and what will I do as mayor? As you know, I led Black outreach for President Barack Obama. It's kind of hard not to have a Black agenda and doing that kind of role in that degree. When I did that within the White House, we focused on minority women businesses. We had the greatest increase in Black contractors getting access to capital than ever before in that annual time period. When I was an assembly member, we had the prompt pay bill, and specifically for MWBEs, increase in Black folks getting access to contracts. My Brother's Keeper program, we're still the only state in the country to create a program specifically around black and
And where
brown
do you
boys.
see things going now? If you were to become mayor, what would you say? What would you make your priorities
Yeah.
to impact, shift things for black folks?
Well, I think to land the plane, you first got to show people a track record.
Sure.
Because I think there's a lot of people who will put out different documents, but you got to say, like, what are you going to do for black folks?
And
So
do
very
you feel like
specifically.
you have a track record that other candidates do not have
Absolutely.
around addressing the needs and realities of black folks?
Absolutely. Well, first, as a black man, check. Second, as the one who has created the My Brother's Keeper program, who focused on minority women businesses, who established and supported the Diversity in Medicine program, yes to all three. So you have to be very direct in that moment. And so to your question of where do we go from here, I have said very specifically, you have to end credit scores when it comes to rent and home ownership applications. That is a racist practice that is hurting black folk to have opportunities. You have a greater incentive in actually employing and contracting with black businesses because MWB has become too abstract. You have to have a greater focus when it talks about civics, financial literacy, and mental health with an intentionality of expanding out the Young Men's Initiative because that is the extension of the My Brother's Keeper program. And then lastly, for black women, we have to be very focused around what we're doing around maternal health crisis and have funding that goes to doulas and midwives. Those are just
Do
some
you
of the
think
specific
Eric
things.
Adams, being the second black mayor of New York City, hinders other black candidates from taking the position because essentially he was put in position, second black mayor, I think a lot of hoopla at the beginning, but he hasn't really delivered. Do you think that harms specifically black candidates who've taken the jump to try to be mayor of New York City?
Absolutely. And would we ever ask that question of a white candidate?
Probably not.
So exactly. So to that degree, we have to be clear.
How do you think black candidates have to show up because of that? Do you think we have to be different in order to really capture the attention to win the seat now?
Well, I think one way of being different is actually not trying to get a pardon from Donald Trump. So I didn't really try to do that. So when we talk through like what makes us different, I'm the only candidate in the race who's been a part of a team that actually defeated Donald Trump when I was vice chair of the DNC. I'm the only candidate in the race who has White House, State House, and local experience. I have the second most clergy endorsements of anyone in this race. So when we talk through the connection as a husband, as a father, as an Alpha Phi Alpha brother, as a Prince Hall Mason, as a Reverend and 100 black man, I don't think anyone could really question my black credentials. Now, to that dynamic here, yes, you have to work harder because you're going to be in some spaces where someone will say, I'm not sure if the city is ready. But I'm that same person that worked for Obama in Iowa where they said, I don't know if we're going to elect a black man. So I choose hope over fear.
Now, let's talk a little bit about pathway to victory, right? Folks are saying Cuomo is tremendously, or is up in polls quite a bit. Is there a pathway to victory given that landscape in this particular moment?
Well, first I want to draw the connection between the conversation we're having and Andrew Cuomo, who's the number one backer of his super PAC is Bill Ackman, the main enemy of DEI. So I've been out with Reverend Sharpton protesting at Bill Ackman's office because he's spending his billions saying we're going to roll back DEI. I mean, this is a guy who wants to roll back the civil rights agenda and is spending
but it appears that there are many folks
donating to Andrew Cuomo. So that's why this show is important.
Certainly.
Because for all the, if you care about DEI, if you care about civil rights, whether you're black, whether you're Jewish,
Sure.
if you want a city, you don't want somebody whose main agenda is rolling back.
But it appears that Cuomo
work.
has gotten the endorsements of many folks who should be against those things.
I wonder
How
why
do
you
you
think
come
that
up?
is, huh?
That's a question for you.
Yeah,
Why do you
well,
think
why
that's
do I think
happening
it
in
is?
this
I
moment?
think it's name recognition in a time of Trumpian distraction. I think that the pandemic served to kind of repress people's memory of the women he abused, of the people he sent to their deaths in nursing homes, of the summer of hell on the subway. But also people don't know. People don't know that his biggest donor is Bill Ackman. People don't know that he spent 60 million taxpayer dollars on his own legal defense to harass
Do you
the women
think
legally
candidates
But I think-
can
sexually.
organize against that? Because Cuomo does have this big push. Do you think candidates are able to organize enough to combat that?
Well, absolutely. Well, I think to Brad's point, we also have to keep reminding people about ranked choice voting. So you're going to have many people that are going to get many endorsements across the board. Fundamentally, Cuomo's up right now because of name recognition.
Certainly.
Right? He has not done a forum or a debate with us on the same stage at all. Right?
And this is the choice New Yorkers are going to have to make. If they're happy to have somebody who's making war on DEI, who's cozying up to Donald Trump, who sexually harasses women, who sends seniors to their deaths in nursing homes and lies about it, who looks at
And
every
as candidates, how do you
situation.
begin to move that needle and pivot where the name recognition doesn't play? We know it's going to play a role in an election, but where it doesn't play such a role, where someone who has a bad track record runs away with it because we can't get the attention of other folks to do something.
Well, you have to give people choice and contrast. So at the end of the day, we are all running to make it very clear on why we are different from the rest. Yes, we're friends, but at the end of the day, we have different visions. And so when it comes to the initial question and to this one, for black folk in New York, when you are trying to decide, do you want that next generation of black leadership who can fight successfully against Trump and ensure that we can actually keep growing, especially when we think about on housing where black New Yorkers have been leaving overwhelmingly across this city, then I'm saying, yes, you have an option here. To that degree, Andrew Cuomo has effectively name recognition at 100% across the city, but there's still hundreds of thousands of people who are like, you know what, I don't want that. So it is our
the highest
job.
negatives of any candidate by far.
So the issues around, which we talk a little bit about these issues that are impacting black folks. Black wealth appears to be important. You both talked about housing. You both talked about contracts, which really speaks to folks' ability to attain and maintain wealth. How do you make black wealth an important issue so that make black folks say maybe Cuomo isn't the option because he can't deliver on that, and these other folks have a plan to do so?
So, I mean, I announced my Better Deal for Black New Yorkers at the National Action Network, where I've been many times talking about what we do to build black wealth and narrow the wealth gap. And then I was out in Brownsville on Wednesday. I was just in an almost all African mosque this Friday afternoon. So you get out in every single community.
Do you think these topics are resonating with these folks?
I mean, yes, when you talk about housing and how people could become homeowners, when you talk about safety, we don't have to be a city where mentally ill folks are sleeping on the subway. When you talk about our schools and how they could help all our kids get the college and career readiness and become the leaders of tomorrow. I mean, sure, that resonates in all communities. One thing I made real clear is like a better deal for black New Yorkers is a better deal for all New Yorkers, what Heather McGhee calls the solidarity dividend. If we could get past that 15-to-1 racial wealth gap, if we could get past systemic racism, all New Yorkers will rise.
And what role do you think housing plays in doing that?
Well, it's paramount. If you want to address the wealth gap, you have to make sure there's more black homeowners, right? And so when you take those steps, it's the reason why we'll continue to say, what are we doing to make it easier for more black folks to become homeowners? And as a homeowner myself, let's be clear. People will look at your credit score, where if you you've consistently paid your rent, that is a better barometer of what you can do as opposed to, did someone miss a phone bill 10 years ago? And equally, how do you help someone with their security deposit up front? Take those steps. But then the next step, Angelo, to your question, is I'm talking about local median income and true cost of living. True cost of living.
Because homes are expensive in New York City.
But it's also the totality of the expenses, right? True cost of living with Jennifer Jones, Austin Champion, which we as New Yorkers voted on and have not implemented because Eric Adams did not implement. We need to do that to actually help black folk, because too often we're only talking about poverty metrics as opposed to childcare, housing, groceries, et cetera. Us knowing that and having local median income, because AMI, area median income, is included in Westchester County, then we can actually give people a better chance to get access to a home and create opportunities.
I want to pivot a little bit.
Can I give you one quick housing thing, though?
Very quick.
All right, so I've got a program called Homes for City Workers that will double the price of a home that a municipal worker, a firefighter, a teacher, a public hospital nurse could afford. So if they could get a $400,000 mortgage, but there's no $400,000 home, pension fund will invest another $400,000, and now you could buy an $800,000.
So there are some ways to do it. We have to make sure those happens, and particularly have a candidate that cares. Let's shift a little bit to that topic of public safety. How do we really address these issues? Some folks will say New York is safer than it's ever been, but if you talk to average New Yorkers, they don't even want to get on a train. How do we really address public safety in a way that doesn't just give police more money in the city of New York?
Number one commitment I'm making in this campaign is to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness. We don't have to
How do we
be
do this?
a city. So there's a strategy called Housing First that's working in Houston, in Denver, in Salt Lake City. Instead of saying to people who are sleeping on the subways or the streets, will you go to shelter? You take them straight from the street into a single room occupancy or supportive housing apartment with services. It works to keep them stably housed 70 to 90%.
Is there
of the
also a
time.
way to incorporate the decriminalization of mental illness while also doing this? Because it appears that that's what's happening. Individuals who may be living on the train or on the street who have mental health issues
right now,
are
the
incarcerated.
response is mostly a police or a carceral response, but my proposal is outreach to get people into housing, which doesn't have anything to do with the criminal justice system, and then people thrive when they get housing and services. Absolutely.
Yeah, look, everyone deserves to get home, full stop. And so when we talk about public safety, the second you walk outside your crib, you should be able to know, can I get back home alive and safe? And as someone who's endured police brutality as a high school student and as an assembly member, that's one of the main things you worry about. And it's the same thing for an officer or a citizen. So when we think about this, what practically can we do? We do not need to substantially increase an NYPD budget.
It's pretty big now.
We need to actually address the NYPD overtime, which was not actually addressing public safety to that degree. Figure out entities like SRG, which essentially is being utilized for reasons that we still don't understand. If you actually then have mental health professionals addressing the mental health concerns when it comes to what's happening on subways, buses, and the community, then you can actually focus more energy around violence interruption work and support those that actually can mobilize. When you think about recently being at Brownsville Safety Alliance, what did they do? For 5 straight days, calls that are coming from 911 are going to the violence interrupters, not to the cops, to figure out how can we resolve this. That's the kind of steps you can do around public safety. But then you also have to think otherwise. Being creative about the lighting that's happening in communities, where you don't have essentially floodlights happening, but you can have brighter lights so people can feel better and more safe and secure when
And
they're
just
walking
quickly,
around.
how do you both feel about the Cure Violence model? Do you think it's useful, it's working? Do you expand that?
You have to expand it and you keep growing. I mean, look, the reality is we've seen the success with it. And if you help more people and then you collaborate with folks up front, when you think about Save Our Streets and a Life Camp and Until Freedom,
Man
so many
Up,
other
many
Man Ups,
organizations,
right,
yeah.
who have done the work, right? They're showing when you support them, we actually have a better chance instead of someone actually ending up at Rikers.
We just put out some data on this first ever data-driven evaluation of the crisis management system, the community violence interrupters in New York City, announced that at Street Corner Resources, about a 20% drop in shootings in those neighborhoods that have one of the CVI groups, 7.5 fewer shootings per precinct. So yes, got to get it to the precincts.
How much
that
more would
don't
you
have
invest
it.
in something like that to have a greater impact? Because you said 20% decrease is quite substantial.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would double the resources going to it because there's a bunch of neighborhoods it's not in, but it's not only more money, it's also a better coordination and management system with
Some
clear goals
centralization,
and outcomes,
possibly.
because some of the groups are able to then help those young people get into jobs, and some of them are great volunteers in the neighborhood but don't have the same pathways, and we're not paying any of the providers on time.
And one of the,
Michael and I have
one of the
been
pieces
talking about.
around homelessness and some of the issues we've discussed is really criminalization. And many of these folks end up on Rikers Island. Yeah. For many years now, advocates have been calling for the closure of Rikers Island. What are your position on the closure of Rikers Island? What happens?
Well, it has to happen. And as someone who has had family at Rikers, as the person who represented Kalief Browder's family, when we think about the inhumane conditions of Rikers, it has to be closed. But we also have to make sure that we're helping people not to get to Rikers in the first place and invest in the opportunity so that someone can have a book in their book bag rather than being arrested for a dime bag, right? When we think about what has to also change, we do need to have borough-based jails that are next to the courthouses so we can be very serious about giving everyone a better chance there. But then also we have to think about how do we have a more comprehensive approach on how we look at justice, right? So not just for the correctional officers, but I go a step back. For the police officers, in the same way we have registry for other elements, we should have a registry if someone had misconduct in another place.
So how do we really transform the justice system collectively in New York City? Brad, your position
we
on...
elect a new mayor.
Well, that's where we start on Rikers.
I will get Rikers closed. It's going to take a mayor who's bold to do it. So on any given day right now, out of the 6,000 or so people there, 1,500 have serious mental illness. So this is another place.
Criminalization of mental health illness.
Approach to mental health is necessary. If those 1,500 folk were in secure treatment instead of on Rikers, first of all, there'd be a lot fewer people on Rikers, and they'd have a chance to be getting well. We also have to reduce trial times. 87% of people at Rikers are awaiting their day in court, almost 90%.
Can't post bail.
But it's grown much longer since the pandemic. If we just get back to 2019 trial times,
we can make
we'll
some
have
significant
1,500
changes.
people fewer.
Let's make this quick pivot before we close. There's a lot of candidates. Some may say it's a crowded field. Do you think some of the candidates have to drop out to make the race viable for an alternative other than Cuomo? How do you all see this landscape?
I think New Yorkers are able to pay attention regardless of the number of candidates, right? Like you had...
So folks don't necessarily have to drop out for New Yorkers to say this is the best candidate.
No, I mean, think about when I was vice chair of the DNC and we had Vice President Biden run. I mean, you're in a scenario where you have like 17 different people that are thinking about it. So at the end of the day, people will focus. And quite frankly, opportunities like this help all of us because then people can see there is an alternative when you're looking for one. And I do believe, I think we can both agree, more New Yorkers actually want an alternative. They just know of a name of Cuomo. And so it is our job to be very clear. If you're looking for someone that is serious in these regards around affordability and to be a fighter against Trump, we're giving you an option here.
Sure. Brad, do you agree with what Mike is saying, or do you think there's some differences there around the crowded field? Do you think some folks need to drop out to give some opportunities?
Look, ranked choice voting will help people who don't want Andrew Cuomo should not put him on their ballot and rank the other candidates. I'll be real clear, though. I'm running to win this race. There's only 3 candidates that are going to have the maximum amount to spend in this race, and I'm one of those 3. I won citywide office already last cycle because a majority of voters who voted for Maya Wiley or Catherine Garcia or a lot for Eric Adams for mayor voted for me for controller.
So are there
I'm
candidates you
running to
feel
put
that should step
majority-
out to give a candidate like yourself an opportunity?
I mean, ranked choice makes it work. I hope people will rank me first. If they rank Michael first, I hope they'll rank me second. That's my strategy.
Let me
to
ask
win.
this before we go. Are there any issues that you see either of each other having that you disagree with? That you say, this makes me a better candidate than Brad, this makes me a better candidate than Mike?
Let me listen.
Well, one thing I'll say is I've enjoyed learning and listening to him on the trail, that focus on the need to attend to the area median income question so we actually get the housing down to low-income people who need it. His focus on true cost of living, I think, is good. So I've learned on the campaign trail. Why am I the candidate to be the mayor? I've got a demonstrated track record of honest public integrity, not Andrew Cuomo. I got a proven executive track record. I've saved taxpayers over $2.5 billion. I run an agency with 700 people. I've audited every city agency. Look up my Yelp for NYCHA repairs, how I'll make life better for NYCHA residents. Look at that $6 billion invested with black businesses.
But do you think in
what I'm saying.
this election there's going to have to be, you folks are going to have to tangle it up a little bit to get Cuomo out of the way because folks often like his bravado. They like that he comes in and is willing to say, hey, I disagree with these folks. I'm better than them. Do you think that needs to happen in that moment?
I think Brad has amplified the serious mental health issue that is commendable and necessary and real when we talk about public safety. Let me be very clear on why I want people to rank me first. When you talk about, is there someone that is ready that can fight Donald Trump that is not Andrew Cuomo? The answer is yes. I'm the only person in this race who has said I've been a part of a team that has defeated him. Do you have someone who understands how a White House should actually work and the impact it is in the city? I understand. I don't work for President Obama. I'm laying out a very clear vision around affordability and how we pay for these programs in a very direct way.
You feel that you do that better than all the other candidates aside from Cuomo as well?
I said I'm doing that better than other candidates. I mean, why would we run if we didn't think that was the case?
Andrew Cuomo isn't standing up to Donald Trump at all, let's be clear.
Well, I think all the candidates agree that Cuomo is not going to.
But
well,
I
they
just
feel
think
like
on
Cuomo may
this,
not
like
be the
when-
one, Adams may not be the one, but amongst the rest of you, how do you feel about each other?
I think collectively people get along, but I think to your question very
And is that an
specifically-
issue
No, it's
when
not
New
an
Yorkers are trying to figure out who to pick?
It's not an issue about getting along. It's about being clear about choice and contrast. And so you have to lay out what is it that's different. And I do want people to think through when we talk about affordability, I'm being very specific on how do we address that. You have to have a local median income, so we're serious about what's happening here. You have to end credit scores when it comes to rent home ownership. You have to address the anti-blackness, which is where we started this conversation, and be very direct about that and communicate how to pay for it. So that is what makes me different. But I think at the end of the day, it is fine, and we should be able to be colleagues who can talk positively.
But to your point around the contrast, what is the contrast? Where does it exist? At least for you, Brad, do you see places where you can say there's some strict contrast around these other
Well, let me do the
candidates?
contrast to Cuomo. Like when Elon Musk stole $80 million from New Yorkers, I was the one who found it, who called it out, and got the city in court to get it back. He hasn't even said one word about any of the cuts that Trump is making. So what good is a bully who's a chicken? That's what Andrew Cuomo is. You want a fighter, Brad Lander. But the main contrast to me to the other candidates is everyone's talking about safety and affordability. What I've got for you is a safer, a more affordable, and a better run city. I know how to run the city better from being controller.
If there is this clear contrast around Cuomo, do you think at some point the candidates come together to address that? Or do you think it doesn't matter, that doesn't matter, let's just stay in our lane and see who comes out with
No,
it?
you got to be very clear. So look, let's go back to what many people believe to be his success, which were press conferences during COVID, where the man was lying about data.
Got a lot of attention in that
And
moment.
15,000 people are dead in nursing homes because of his policy. While he was doing that, I was feeding people across New York City with World Central Kitchen. So again, I do think you get to the point where you have to be very clear about the contrast so that people can then internalize there is a different option. And at the end of the day, our job, my job, is to make it very clear, this is the approach I'm giving you that others are not. And you can make your decision what may be. But when we know that childcare and housing are the two fundamental expenses people are trying to figure out, when we know people are trying to assess, can I get home safely and can I be protected in my schools and in my communities? Yes, I do believe we got to be very clear that I, Michael Blake, have given you a new generation of black leadership who has managed. The one thing I'll say to Brad's point, yes, I understand Brad has managed as a comptroller. I have managed entities within our company as a small business owner. I've managed it at the Kairos Democracy Project,
level.
Literally at every level. So there's
and you're saying that Brad hasn't done
no,
that.
I'm saying to the point, there are multiple managers in this
Okay.
race, right? Which I think is important to your question because a mayor is a manager.
Indeed.
And I think there are some people in this race who actually cannot say that they have managed.
They don't have the experience.
They have
to
not
do that.
managed anything at a large
Who
scale.
are these folks?
I think people will be able to see that throughout ranked choice voting. But that was a good question, Angela.
Brad, your thoughts on this last piece, the contrast from other candidates? Are there folks who you feel like don't measure up to you as a
Well,
candidate?
look, obviously I wouldn't be running if I didn't think I was the best one to run the city in what is going
Are
to be
you willing
some
to
hard
say why?
times.
Like, this candidate doesn't do this, like I will do this.
Well, we're all running because we don't think Eric Adams should be mayor. So.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've
He
had
might
a
not have
lot
a
to
shot
say
anyway.
about why Eric Adams should not be mayor, but we don't need to replace one corrupt chaos agent with another, and that's why I'm focused on why Andrew Cuomo should not be mayor. After that, I'm focused on why I should be mayor, that I can run this city, the best of all the candidates in the race. So if you want a safer, more affordable, and better run city, rank Brad Lander number one. If you rank Michael Blake number one, rank Brad Lander number two. Don't rank Andrew Cuomo anywhere on your ballot.
Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you,
We really
Angelo.
appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
My thanks to the mayoral candidates Brad Lander and Michael Blake. I'm Angelo Pinto, and this is Let It Rip. Now for some final thoughts. Let's talk ranked choice voting. Here's how it works. In local primaries and special elections, you can now rank up to 5 candidates in order of preference. If no one gets over 50% of first choice votes, the lowest ranked candidates are eliminated, and their votes are redistributed based on next choices until someone crosses that 50% line. Sounds fair, right? In theory, ranked choice voting should give voters more choice and encourage candidates to appeal to a broader base. But let's talk about the reality for black voters. Studies have shown that while ranked choice voting can lead to more diverse candidates being elected, it also presents challenges for lower income communities, which often include black voters, have shown less engagement with ranked choice voting, partly due to the lack of outreach and education. So what does this mean for the black agenda? If candidates aren't clearly articulating policies that address black communities' needs, and if voters aren't fully informed about how to use ranked choice voting effectively, the system could end up silencing the very voices it aims to amplify. Bottom line, ranked choice voting has potential, but without targeted education and a commitment to addressing black issues, it risks perpetuating the status quo. I'm Angelo Pinto, and this is Let It Rip.